Mechanic saved their Christmas. The single mom CEO repaid him with a future. The snowstorm came without warning, swallowing the highway in a white, merciless blur. Angela Carter gripped the steering wheel of her SUV as the wind howled like a wounded animal, and the world ahead flickered between shadows and swirling frost. Christmas Eve was supposed to be magical, a night she had promised her 7-year-old son, Liam, to make special after a year that had nearly broken both of them. But as her vehicle trembled, sputtered, and suddenly died at the center of an isolated mountain road, all she could think was that fate had chosen the cruelest moment to strike again. The storm raged, the temperature plummeted, and Angela, dressed for a corporate charity gala in a bright red silk dress, stepped into the freezing night with nothing but fear in her chest, her son shivering in the back seat, and a sinking feeling that Christmas was about to be ruined forever. Speech balloon: if you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it forward, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. Angela Carter was known in New York's financial world as the unstoppable CEO who rebuilt her father's failing company from the ground up after his sudden passing. But behind the polished image and confident stride, she carried the weight of a single mother who often went days without sleep, juggling boardrooms, parent-teacher meetings, investor crises, and the quiet tears she shed alone at 2 a.m. when the world felt impossibly heavy. She had promised Liam this trip to the mountains, a small cabin getaway where they would finally rest, bake cookies, decorate their tiny tree together, and forget the pressures of the world for just a little while. But now, stuck in a snowstorm with no signal, no passing cars, and her child's teeth chattering in the back seat, she felt powerless for the first time in years. She wrapped her corporate blazer around her bare shoulders and stood by the SUV, wiping her tears before they could freeze on her skin. Miles away, through the bitter cold and the swirling snow, a man named Jack Turner was finishing repairs at his small auto shop, the only one within 30 miles. Jack was a quiet kind of man, the kind who rarely asked for help and rarely expected any. After losing his wife to cancer 2 years earlier, Christmas had become little more than a painful reminder of the family he once had. He would close the shop early every Christmas Eve, return to his small cabin with his old dog, Bo, and sit by the fire as silence pressed around him. But this year, something tugged at him, a strange, restless feeling. Before locking the shop, he tossed a toolbox into his truck, telling himself he'd just do one last drive through the mountain road for peace of mind. He didn't expect to find anything. He just needed to feel useful, even if only to the empty night. As he drove deeper into the storm, the shape of a black SUV emerged faintly through the white haze. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, like the last sparks of a dying fire. Jack slowed, heart tightening when he saw a young woman hugging herself for warmth, her dress far too thin for the brutal cold, her hair coated with snowflakes. And then he saw the small face peering through the back window, the frightened eyes of a child. In that instant, something sharp and protective flared to life inside him. He stepped out of his truck, clutching his toolbox, crunching through the knee-deep snow as he approached her. Angela felt a sudden rush of fear. Being stranded was bad enough, but a stranger approaching in a storm was a risk she hadn't prepared for. Yet the moment Jack reached her, she noticed the gentleness in his expression, the sincerity in his eyes, and the way he spoke with steady reassurance. He introduced himself simply as Jack, a mechanic from the area, and said he'd check the vehicle. She watched with numb fingers and trembling breath as he opened the hood, snow collecting on his jacket while he studied the engine. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and every passing moment made her more aware of Liam's soft sobs inside the SUV. Jack discovered that the engine had overheated due to a failing coolant pump. Fixable, but not in a storm, not with the tools he carried, not in the dark freezing forest. He explained it gently, not wanting to overwhelm her, and added that staying there meant risking hypothermia. He offered to take them to his cabin a short distance away. Angela hesitated. She was a woman alone with her child, and trusting a stranger went against every instinct she had. But another violent gust of wind shook the SUV, and Liam's weak voice called out for her. She looked at Jack again and saw no threat, only concern. With a trembling nod, she agreed. The journey to Jack's cabin was slow and silent except for the crunch of tires over deep snow. Liam sat wrapped in Jack's emergency blanket, clinging to his mother's arm. Angela stared out the window, overwhelmed with guilt for putting her child in danger, overwhelmed with gratitude for the stranger who had appeared like a miracle in the night. Jack's cabin was small but warm, with the soft glow of a fireplace casting golden light across the rustic wooden walls. After guiding them inside, Jack turned on the old space heater, heated water for them, and handed Liam a small cup of hot chocolate from a dusty packet he kept in the cupboard. The boy's eyes lit up, and Jack smiled quietly, the first genuine smile he had managed in months. Angela watched as Jack knelt beside her son, adjusting the blanket around him with the same tenderness a father would give. Something inside her tightened, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded her how long it had been since she'd seen such simple, selfless kindness. Jack didn't ask who she was, didn't ask why she was stranded, didn't pry into her life or her wealth. He only cared that her child was safe and warm. That night, while the storm raged outside, Angela sat by the fire with Liam asleep on her lap and Jack on the other side of the room repairing an old lantern. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, grounding, almost healing. Morning came with pale sunlight breaking through the frost-covered window. Jack drove back to Angela's SUV, repaired the coolant pump with parts salvaged from his shop, and made sure everything worked perfectly before giving the keys back to her. Angela insisted on paying him, not just fairly, but generously. Jack refused. All he said was, "It's Christmas. Helping you, it felt right." For someone who had lost nearly everything, those words revealed more than he realized. Angela understood people better than most. She saw the grief in his eyes, the loneliness, the exhaustion of a man who had been carrying too much on his own. Before leaving, she asked for his business card. Jack didn't have one, his shop was small, barely surviving, with equipment older than he was. He scribbled his number on a piece of paper instead. Angela folded it carefully, feeling something inside her shift. After returning to New York, Angela couldn't stop thinking about the quiet, humble mechanic in the mountains. Something about him stayed with her, the way he protected her child, the way he asked for nothing, the way he made a freezing Christmas Eve feel like a miracle instead of a disaster. A week later, when she learned through a quick search that Jack's shop was on the brink of shutting down due to debt and lack of equipment, she made a decision that surprised even her. She drove back to the mountains. When Jack saw her SUV pull into his shop's icy parking lot, he froze. Angela stepped out wearing a warm winter coat this time, her confidence gradually softening into something more personal as she approached him. She told him the truth, who she was, what she owned, and why she had returned. Jack seemed stunned, almost embarrassed. But Angela continued, telling him how deeply his kindness had touched her, how he had saved her and her child from harm, and how she wanted to repay him. But her repayment wasn't money. It wasn't charity. It was partnership. Angela offered to invest in his shop, not to take it over, but to help him rebuild it into something bigger, something worthy of his dedication. She offered new equipment, a proper heating system, a renovated garage space, and a marketing team that would bring customers from all over the county. Jack tried to decline again, but Angela stood firm this time. She reminded him that sometimes people didn't need to be strong alone. Sometimes life gave a second chance disguised as a cold snowy night and a stranger knocking on a frozen window. And so, reluctantly but gratefully, Jack accepted. Over the weeks that followed, Angela visited often with Liam, who adored Jack and followed him around the workshop asking endless questions. Jack taught the boy how to change tires, how to check oil levels, and how to listen to the heartbeat of an engine. Angela watched from the office, her heart swelling at the sight. It wasn't long before she found herself lingering longer each visit, sharing coffee with Jack, learning about his late wife, opening up about her own struggles, and feeling a connection that grew deeper with every passing day. Winter melted slowly into the soft bloom of early spring in the mountains, but even as the last patches of snow dissolved under the warm sunlight, the memory of that Christmas lingered in Angela Carter's heart like an untouched ornament stored carefully for the next holiday. It was strange, she often thought, how life could pivot from loneliness to connection without warning, how a single night stranded in a storm had reshaped both her path and her perspective. After that Christmas, Angela found herself making more frequent trips to the mountains, not because of business, not because of necessity, but because something there felt grounding in a way she had never experienced in the bustling pace of her city life. It felt like stepping into a different universe, one where the air was gentler, the nights quieter, and where Jack Turner's steady presence slowly filled voids she didn't know were still open. Jack's repair shop became a hub of life within the county, thanks to Angela's investment and his unwavering dedication. Locals who had known Jack before his loss noticed the change in him, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Where once his eyes had carried the weight of absence, they now carried a quiet hope, a warmth that surfaced more each time Angela parked her SUV outside his garage. Liam, now comfortable enough to run inside ahead of her, treated the shop like a second home. He learned the names of tools, made little drawings for Jack's office wall, and talked endlessly about becoming a part-time mechanic, part-time superhero, a combination that made Jack laugh in ways he hadn't in years. But beneath the surface of this growing connection was a tension Angela had tried to ignore, a fear rooted not in doubt of Jack but in doubt of herself. She had spent so long being the pillar, the provider, the one expected to have solutions ready before problems even fully emerged. Love was something she had quietly shut out, pushing it onto a distant shelf labeled someday. She didn't know how to let someone step into her world, didn't know if she even had room between board meetings and motherly responsibilities and the constant pressure to maintain the empire she had rebuilt. Yet every time she saw Jack kneeling beside Liam to show him how an engine worked, or noticed the way he listened when she ranted about a stressful day, or caught him glancing at her with a softness that made her heartbeat stutter, she realized that this wasn't an intrusion. It was a gift. One she wasn't sure she deserved, but one she desperately wanted. Jack, too, felt the shift. He could fix an engine by listening to its hum, could diagnose problems by touch, but when it came to understanding the emotions growing inside him, he was lost. He never expected to care again, not after losing his wife, not after believing that life had already given him all the love it intended to offer. But Angela, she was different. She wasn't filling the space his wife once occupied, she was creating a new one, gently, steadily, without rushing him. She didn't try to erase his past, she honored it simply by being patient with it. And Liam, oh, Liam was the son he didn't realize he missed. His laughter brought life back to the cabin, filling the quiet corners that had been empty far too long. Spring turned to summer, and with it came a shift Angela never anticipated. The board of her company demanded she relocate more operations overseas, offering her expansion opportunities that would double the company's value. It was everything she had worked for, everything she thought she wanted. Yet the moment she read the proposal, her stomach twisted. It wasn't the work she feared, it was the distance. The thought of leaving the mountains, leaving Jack, leaving the place that had taught her to breathe again, it clawed at her. She found herself sitting on the balcony of her city apartment late into the night, staring at the skyline with a heaviness she couldn't decipher. She realized that success had always been her compass, but now, something else was pulling her, something warmer, quieter, but just as powerful. Jack sensed the storm before she even spoke about it. When Angela visited the cabin that weekend, he noticed the tired curve of her smile, the way she held her coffee mug like it anchored her to the moment. She explained everything, carefully, almost apologetically, as though her ambition was something to be ashamed of. Jack didn't try to stop her. He didn't try to pull her away from the future she had fought so hard to build. Instead, he simply listened, offering her the silent understanding she had come to crave. But over the next few weeks, Angela realized something life-changing. She didn't have to choose between success and happiness. She could build both, just differently. She reorganized her teams, relocated only the departments that needed to move, and positioned trusted executives to take over responsibilities she no longer needed to micromanage. For the first time in her career, Angela allowed herself to ask the question she never had the luxury to ask: what do I want, not just what is required of me? And the answer was unexpectedly simple. She wanted balance. She wanted peace. She wanted a life where Liam could grow without the constant pressure of her schedule. She wanted to spend Christmases not trapped in boardrooms but surrounded by warmth, laughter, and snow-dusted mountains. And she wanted Jack, not because he rescued her, but because he made her feel safe in a way that didn't diminish her strength. Autumn arrived with golden leaves coating the ground like scattered memories. One crisp afternoon, Angela stood in Jack's shop while he tightened bolts on a customer's truck. She watched him, admiring the ease and focus in his movements, wondering how someone could be so steady, so grounded. Jack glanced up and caught her staring, and instead of looking away, Angela stepped closer, her heart quiet but full. It was in that moment, inside a small mountain shop that smelled of motor oil and pine wood, that Angela felt the final piece fall into place. She realized she wasn't standing at the edge of a decision, she was stepping into the future she wanted. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and painted the sky in soft hues of amber, Angela asked Jack and Liam to take a walk with her along the quiet forest trail behind the cabin. The leaves crunched beneath their feet, the air held a gentle chill, and the silence of nature wrapped around them like a blanket. Liam ran ahead chasing fireflies, leaving Angela and Jack trailing behind. And there, beneath the canopy of autumn branches, Angela made a choice, not with dramatic declarations, not with fear, but with quiet certainty. She told Jack she wasn't leaving. She told him she was ready for a life where work didn't control her, where Liam could grow with stability, where holidays weren't obligations but celebrations. And she told him that what she felt for him, slowly growing, deeply rooted, was real. Jack didn't respond with grand gestures. He didn't need to. His expression softened, and his eyes shimmered with something that looked like relief, gratitude, and a tenderness long suppressed. He took her hand, rough, warm, steady, and held it like something precious. Liam turned back toward them, laughing, calling their names, and in that moment, Angela realized that this simple walk in the mountains, at dusk, with the two people who had become her heart, was the beginning of something she had never dared to imagine, a family rebuilt not from desperation, but from choice. That winter, exactly 1 year after the night Angela's SUV broke down in a snowstorm, they celebrated Christmas together in the cabin that once symbolized Jack's solitude and now symbolized their shared hope. The tree stood tall, decorated with ornaments Angela and Liam brought from the city and handmade ones Jack carved in secret. The fireplace crackled softly, snow dusted the windows, and the warm smell of gingerbread filled the air. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't luck. It was two lives choosing each other, healing each other, rebuilding gently, quietly, steadily, one season at a time. And for the first time, Angela understood what it meant when people said that sometimes the future finds you when you least expect it. For her, it began on a frozen road, in a red dress, with fear in her chest and a stranger walking toward her through the storm. But the real miracle wasn't that Jack saved their Christmas. It was that he unknowingly saved their future.